Welcome to episode 4 of That Philly Jawn. I'm Nazir T. Smith with Jake Clark and Brian McLernon. And to start us off, guys, we have the Philadelphia Eagles. And which loss do y'all think was worse, the 49ers or Cowboys?
I'm going to have to say the 49ers. I mean, the build-up to that game was probably unlike any game that we've seen before for this regular season, and all the revenge aspects of this game being a huge factor in. I mean, obviously the NFC Championship game, will Brock Purdy perform at an elite level playing the entire game? We'll see how that goes. All the trash talking, we saw stuff with A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel, and also the fact that we just got absolutely dismantled and outplayed. We started off good in the first quarter, and then it kind of just crumbled down from there, so I'm going to have to say the 49ers for that one.
Well, I'm going to have to say that both losses were really bad, but I'm going to have to go with the Cowboys loss being worse with all the history between Dallas versus Philly. Losing a rivalry matchup like that in Dallas is not really going to leave a good taste in the mouth of many Philadelphians, and I think that game, while the MVP doesn't really matter as much as a team perspective, Jalen Hurts lost out on any chance to win MVP because of the way he played against Dak Prescott, who's another MVP finalist. So I think for those two reasons, I think that loss against the Cowboys was much, much worse than the one against the 49ers.
And that leads to the question are the Eagles a legit playoff team?
I'm going to have to say yes. I have both feet in the door on the Philadelphia Eagles. They're still a 10-3 football team, and I think that the question isn't are they going to make the playoffs? They are going to make the playoffs. Are they legit? Anything can happen when it comes to playoff time, and I think that the amount of talent that they put out on the field every single week is enough to help overcome all of the other issues with play calling and things like that, and the health that we discussed about 2 weeks ago. So I think that with the talent they put out on the field, if they can control the turnovers, I think the Eagles are a legit playoff contender.
When it comes to being in or out with this team, I'm going to say I have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. I mean, right now, from the way the team has been playing against the 49ers and Cowboys, they just looked defeated out there. They look like they don't want to be there. They just look like they're down in the dumps, and it's just they haven't looked like the team that we've all wanted them to be. And just the play calling, both offensive and defensive woes, have definitely played a factor in the morale of this team. And it's just, I don't know if they're going to be able to sustain that throughout the rest of the season, especially going into playoff time when you're facing a lot of tough opponents. Right now they're sitting at the 5 seed, so who knows if they'll have to go on the road to play an away game.
I mean, you mentioned the rest of the season. They have the easiest remaining regular season. They're probably going to go to Seattle on Monday night, beat Seattle. And then you have the Giants, the Cardinals, and the Giants. That is a very easy end of the year. Hopefully it boosts some confidence in this team, and I think that confidence would take a lot of weight into the playoffs for this Philadelphia Eagles football team.
So who do you feel is to blame for these losses?
Well, Brian, I owe you an apology because I sat on this very show and 2 weeks ago said that Brian Johnson was not the biggest concern when it came to the Philadelphia Eagles. And I'm completely wrong, but I'm still going to have to say that Sean Desai is the blame for these losses. 42 points to the Niners, 30-plus against the Dallas Cowboys. Those are 2 bad losses, and I think that when we look at the defense, no one wants to make a stop on 3rd down. No one wants to tackle. The pass rush has come back down to earth. You can't expect a record-breaking season year and year and year again. So some other position group has to step up, and right now the linebackers have played atrociously bad, and the secondary, nobody wants to take anybody to the ground besides Reed Blankenship, and I think that for those reasons the defense has been really playing and underperforming, and it's underwhelming how bad the defense has been to this point.
Yeah, I'm going to switch topics and say Brian Johnson is to blame. I know I've been ripping on him. I've been ripping on this play calling pretty much throughout this entire show's existence. So sorry to be repetitive, but speaking of repetitiveness, it's this Eagles offense. They're very predictable. Bubble screens, QB draws on 3rd and long. It's the same 4, 5, 6 play calls that they keep running. And just having that, it's just not going to work out for this team. The red zone offense has been terrible as of recently. I mean, they just have not been getting in the end zone instead of just settling for field goals. There's no adjustments. There's no motioning going on. I saw a stat before the show saying that this team motions the least amount for all 32 NFL teams. I think they only motion about 9% of their drives. So that's just not good to see. And of course, the turnovers have been huge. We saw the 3 turnovers against Dallas play a big factor, and all those being in Dallas territory. So that ultimately is pretty much what decided that game.
Now, I'm just going to say that the turnovers are not Brian Johnson's fault. That is a player error. Same thing goes for the tackling with Sean Desai. But I think that the thing that really bothers me is it doesn't matter if it's 3rd and 5, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 17, 3rd and 20. It seems as though teams are picking up 3rd downs, and it doesn't matter how long the distance is. So it doesn't really matter. It seems this Eagles defense can't really make stops when it matters most. And when it comes in the playoffs, you're going to have to stop some pretty good offenses like the 49ers and the Cowboys, which you couldn't do in these past 2 weeks.
Yeah, Jake, you brought up an interesting stat. I think the Eagles defense allowed, 11 straight scoring drives?
I think it was 10 straight scoring drives between the end of the 49ers game and the beginning of the Cowboys game that ended with points. So that just can't happen when we're trying to get later and later in the season and play our best football. And so for those reasons, I think that Sean Desai, while he's trying to mix it up, Brian Johnson stayed consistent, and it's been consistently all right to this point. But I think that Sean Desai is trying to mix it up, but right now just nothing's working, and nothing really has been working all season.
All right, moving on to the 76ers with Kelly Oubre returning. Does his return elevate this team?
Absolutely. I think that Kelly Oubre makes this team so much better because of what he does not only on the offensive end of the floor, but on the defensive end of the floor. He's a two-way player in which he's able to – he doesn't need the ball to score, which I think is a really big thing. He can be a catch-and-shoot guy, a good defender. He's a good wing defender. I think a much better wing defender than Tobias Harris. So for all of those reasons I just mentioned, I think he elevates this team and is a great third option for them.
Yeah, I mean, Oubre, he started off the season very well before getting in that unfortunate motor vehicle accident, but he was a guy that you could rely on. He's an extra man that you can rely on. Again, started off the season well. It takes some pressure off of the bench, relying on them to have some really good games. And we did see a little bit of that when guys like Embiid and Maxey weren't playing. But to have Oubre back is definitely going to elevate this team, in my opinion, and hopefully they can keep adding that win column and keep on going towards the number 1 spot in the East.
Now, Tobias Harris, is he a valuable third option?
Third option, no. I think that Oubre is a much better third option for this Philadelphia 76ers team because of how well he plays on the defensive end. I think that Tobias Harris is a great fourth option and does what Oubre does very well, just not on the defensive end. I think Oubre is a better rebounder. He's a better wing defender. I think Tobias does the same thing offensively where he doesn't need the ball to score. And I think that because this Sixers team has guys like Oubre and Tobias where they can score without the ball and allow Maxey and Embiid to run that two-man game, I think that they're going to be very dangerous. But to answer the question, third option, no. Fourth option, yes.
And also, I'm going to have to agree with you, Jake, but historically, Harris has just not really been a good third option for the 76ers team. Recently, within these past few years, I just don't think he's really gained the trust from most Sixers fans as that third option, but I think now that Oubre is back, that'll definitely ease some of the tension off of him, and he can be a little sneaky guy out there on the court for the Sixers, and it can definitely up his game a little bit.
Do y'all feel like the Sixers need a deadline move?
I would say yes. I would say that while they have a lot of rotational pieces right now that are built for them to win, I think that there's a guy who's an asset, a very big trade asset, and it would work best for both sides. Unfortunately, Jaden Springer is an explosive guard that is not getting a lot of minutes here with the Sixers, and there are a lot of bad teams in the NBA. The San Antonio Spurs are bad. The Washington Wizards are bad. The Detroit Pistons have lost 21 straight games to this point while we're filming the show. So for those reasons, I think that there are teams that could use a young guard in Jaden Springer and are willing to give up a couple second-round picks that the Sixers would desperately need because of all the big trades that they've made. So I think that it would work best for both sides, which is unfortunate to say because I like Jaden Springer a lot, but I think he would excel more on another organization where he can see the floor more.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say no for Sixers requiring a deadline addition. I just think we have enough depth to win right now. I like the pieces that we added in the offseason. I like the system that Nick Nurse is running. I like the guys that he brought in, Covington, Batum, all those guys, all the guys we've mentioned before. I like the additions that we brought in, and I think overall with us winning these games, I think we're 14-7, something like that? as of filming this. So I think I like the way that we've started the year so far. Hopefully, with this depth can help us more as we can continue on throughout the season.
Moving on to the Flyers, what did this upcoming schedule mean for them?
Well, they're playing a lot of good teams, and I think that what it means for the Flyers is we're going to see what they're really made of. I think that when you're playing other contending teams like they are right around now, I think that it's going to really show, is this Flyers team a pretender or a legit contender? And I think that this is a big, big stretch because most of the times with young teams, it doesn't matter what sport, they start off super hot and then they cool off midway through the season. I think that we're going to have to see the Flyers stay hot throughout this stretch and continue being dominant offensively. And I think for those reasons that this means everything for the Philadelphia Flyers.
Yeah, Jake, I agree. I mean, this is the year, or at least one of the years, where the Flyers can prove to the rest of the league that this year is different, that they are a true contender. I mean, they're sitting at one of the top spots in the playoff race right now.
Yeah, I believe they're third in the Metro.
Yes.
Third in the Metro.
Yeah, I think they've just been proving a lot of doubters wrong, especially Flyers fans like myself and us up here on the desk. We'll just call it
on the
desk.
set.
On the set. There we go.
Yeah.
We go. But yeah, they're just proving a lot of the rest of the league that this year is different. I really hope that they can do so, continuing on throughout the year, having their young guys just continue to play as well as they have. Overall, I think for the first time in these past few years, I think we can really say that we are truly confident in this Flyers team.
And how does this extended road trip help with this young team, impact this young team?
I think that it's going to impact them a lot. I think that being on the road is hard for a young team. Again, doesn't matter what sport, because you're not around the home fans. You're constantly in a hostile environment. You have a bunch of jet lag. And I think for all those reasons, they're going to get tired. And it's probably going to show over this road trip. Right now, they're sitting at 9-4-1 on the road. So they've been pretty solid on the road over the year. But I just think that they're going to have to really step it up. Like we were talking about, tough schedule. A lot of it's on the road. I think, Brian, you said they only have 3 home games until
like January 4th or something like that.
Until the new year. So I think that that's going to be really hard for a young team. And again, we're just going to really see what they're made out of.
Yeah, I mean, this Flyers team, they've won 7 of 8 road games as of recently, I think as of us recording this. So, I mean, they're red hot on the road. I love the way that they're playing. Again, you said, Jake, 9-4-1 away record. I mean, they've just been playing exceptional. Hopefully they can continue that. But it definitely means a lot that this team is winning. And with it being such a young team, you don't really expect such a young team, especially a team recently within the past few years that have been just playing down, to just all of a sudden get so hot on the road, which is way tougher, obviously, than being at home. So it's great to see. I think it can catch a couple other contending teams by surprise, and that can definitely play to the Flyers' advantage.
But can John Tortorella be the coach that brings the Stanley Cup?
I would say yeah. I mean, he's a historically good coach. He built his team very well. He has won a Stanley Cup before in Tampa Bay, so he is definitely a very talented guy. He's been to the playoffs many times. So I think the way he develops his young and talented players, I think he can definitely be that guy. I mean, the Flyers already are playing above expectations from what we've talked about. So I think, yeah, within the next 2-3 years, as he continues to develop his young talent, I think he can totally be the guy that can bring us a Stanley Cup.
I'm usually the pessimist on this show, especially when it comes to the basketball team in town. But with the Flyers this year, I'm very optimistic, and I'm going to agree with Brian and say, yes, I think that John Tortorella can be the guy to bring in the Stanley Cup back for the first time since the late 70s for the Philadelphia Flyers. And I think that he's had 12 playoff runs. The last time he was in the playoffs was recent in the 2019-2020 season. He was a first-round exit. He has won Stanley Cup with the Tampa Bay Lightning. And I think that with all those things considered, he's a guy that when he comes in, builds up an organization, fosters and really lets young talent grow right before our own very eyes. And I think that he does a great job of building up a program and taking them to the promised land, whether the promised land is the playoffs or even the Stanley Cup. And I think with this Flyers team, this young core, if they keep them together and keep getting better, I think they could be a Stanley Cup winner within the next 5 to 10 years.
And lastly, onto the Phillies. How does Shohei Ohtani impact the Phillies heading into next year?
I think that it makes a huge concern if you're a Philadelphia Phillies fan, because Shohei Ohtani is now with the Los Angeles Dodgers, who were already good. Now you not only have to deal with the Atlanta Braves, but you have to deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers as well in the postseason. So I think that there being now two major giant teams in the NL makes it a lot harder for the Phillies, who have yet to really make any big signings besides Aaron Nola.
I'm going to say that it definitely does play a huge impact, but I wouldn't say it's too much of an impact. I mean, we've never seen Ohtani play in the postseason, so we never know how it'll perform. I mean, him and Trout could never get there. I mean, there were obviously Trout injury concerns, and just overall the Angels could not build a talented enough team to really get there. So we've never seen Ohtani in the postseason. We never know how he'd perform. I mean, he did perform in the WBC, obviously won his country a ring, I guess. But I mean, we just haven't really seen the way that he would play in a postseason environment where there's, I would say, probably better competition in the MLB. So for that reason alone, I will say it's definitely a concern because of how talented Ohtani is, how talented this Dodgers team is overall with the addition of him, and the fact that they can get even more with his contract. But I think right now, it's definitely a concern, but I wouldn't say it's a giant concern that every Phillies fan should be overreacting about.
Not only does Ohtani going to the Dodgers impact for next season, right, and seasons to come with this Phillies core that we have right now as a playoff threat, it impacts them right now as we sit here doing this show. Because of the way the contract is structured, the Dodgers freed up about $24 million to go out and sign somebody. You know who Shohei Ohtani is pretty close with? Yoshinobu Yamamoto, who the Phillies are also targeting. So I think that because of all those things, might be a reason that Yamamoto doesn't end up coming to Philly. And I think that that's another major concern that we haven't really totally grasped yet as fans.
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Jake. I mean, he did want to play with another Japanese player, and the fact that the Dodgers can build up that rotation. I mean, we won't see Ohtani pitch in his first year due to his injury from last season, but once we do see that dynamic duo on the mound, that's going to be scary. But it's really just focusing on what we know now. I mean, who knows if they'll get Yamamoto? Maybe we can snag him. I don't know. I mean, Phillies don't really have a history of grabbing Japanese-born players, but
who's to say they can't start now?
Yeah, exactly. You're right. I mean, who's to say they can't start now? And hopefully Dombrowski can make that move.
And speaking of Dombrowski, why do you think he won't sign any players in the offseason?
I just think it's because Dave Dombrowski believes he's built a winning baseball team. And I think that for that reason, he's very reluctant to go out and try and bring anybody in. I think that when we look at this team 2 years ago, they overachieved by a lot, made the World Series. They were a brink playoff team at best. This past season, it was pretty much World Series or bust, and they underachieved, but just slightly, being in the NLCS and going to a Game 7 against the Diamondbacks, which they should have won, but it's in the past, and we just have to deal with the fact that they lost. So for those reasons, I think that that's why Dombrowski is reluctant, but I'm confused as to why. I know I shouldn't say I'm confused as to why. I know why he's doing it, but something has to change because of the way they underperformed and the way that everybody went cold. The guys that you're paying millions upon millions of dollars. Harper went cold, Turner went cold, Schwarber went cold, and Castellanos went cold. And it even rubbed off onto some of the younger players like Stott and Bohm, who were also cold during that series. This team is too streaky, and you need a steady bat. And I think that somebody has to go. And when we look at the guys that have bought in, the four big ones, in Schwarber, Turner, Harper, and Castellanos, Harper's bought in since the day he's been here, except for saying he was going to bring a title to Washington on opening day on his first game as a Philly. Other than that, he's been all in on Philadelphia. Kyle Schwarber has the ads with Wawa. He seems to be in on the Philadelphia area. Ever since Turner got his standing ovation, he seems to be really all in on Philly and talks about how much he loves the city. The guy that doesn't seem that in on Philly, Nick Castellanos. So don't be shocked if Nick Castellanos gets moved because of his hefty contract and he's so streaky and he's been underperforming compared to the rest of them.
I'd say Nick's son Liam is probably more in on Philly than he is at this point.
I would agree with that.
I mean, us Phillies fans, we love his son. So, I mean, just the fact that it's a shame because I love Castellanos. I love the talent that he can provide, but just seeing him go cold, seeing other guys go cold in the postseason just kind of just not replicating that magic that we were hoping to see coming back from the season before. It's unfortunate to see. I mean, hopefully Dombrowski does make a move. I mean, there's guys still out there. Grabbing a guy like Cody Bellinger to boost up the outfield. Get Hader if you want to get that closer spot. But I don't think Dombrowski wants to solidify a closer spot. I think he still wants to be it as a committee. So we'll kind of see what he does. Hopefully he can get Yamamoto to boost up the starting rotation. You're right, Jake. Something does need to change because I think something needs to be added in order for us to really compete again with the Braves and hopefully compete with the Dodgers.
And the frustrating thing is we knew what we were getting with a guy like Kyle Schwarber. Home run, single, or strikeout. With Turner, he started the year bad and then bounced back, and he's going to be here for the next 9 to 10 years. Harper has been amazing and just had a bad postseason run by his standards, which was still pretty good compared to anybody else. Castellanos, when you look at it, his first year he was so underwhelming with the bat, but had a pretty solid glove. And then this year, he had a really hot stretch and then cooled off again towards the end of the season and was cold in the postseason, except for a couple games where he had the home run stretch. But I think that when you look at it, he's so hot and cold, and right now what this team needs is somebody that's consistent. Right now they don't have anybody that's super consistent besides maybe Bryce Harper, who wasn't as consistent in this past postseason, in my opinion. So I think for those reasons, when you look at it, who's bought in on the city, who are you paying a lot of money, and who's the streakiest, it all kind of points that Nick Castellanos should be the one that should be packing his bags and getting out of here.
Okay, that's it for episode 4 of That Philly Jawn. I'm Nazir T. Smith with Jake Clark and Brian McLernon, and see y'all next time.
That's it.